Hi, and welcome into one of the very first videos of week 3. And quite honestly, this might be the most impactful video you ever watch, actually. Not just in this program, but sincerely, the idea that I'm going to share with you today, it actually changed my life like nothing else. And this has the power to completely shift your self-concept. And quite honestly, I would love if you could even find a quiet place to really listen in to this video and absorb everything I'm sharing with you on it, okay? And I want to start with just a handful of questions you can start to ask yourself to start to discover what's going on at the deeper levels of you. And again, when you discover this and you actually let go of it, it will drastically change your point of attraction forever. And I'm living proof of this, okay? So, the very first question that we want to uncover is, what are you still a victim to in your life? What are you still a victim to in your life? So in week 2, the second exercise I had you do, and if you haven't done it actually, by the way, I'd really love for you to do that before you do this one, okay? They kind of go in order for a reason, but the idea of that exercise was to discover what is the story you're telling yourself, and what have you been through in your life, and what are you a victim to still? So that's the first question. I'm going to share with you the other two questions, though, that you can ask yourself. And then I'm actually going to share with you my story. And then lastly, at the end, we're actually going to go through the exercise together and exactly what you need to do. Okay. So the other two questions are, what haven't you made peace with yet in your life? What haven't you made peace with yet in your life? All right. And the third question is, who do you still hate and why? Who do you still hate and why? All three of these questions have the power to lead you to what you are a victim to in your life still, and whatever you're still giving and flowing a lot of energy to. Okay, that's essentially what we're trying to do, is uncover what is still there in our life that we're flowing a lot of energy to still, whether that's consciously or unconsciously. Okay, I want to share with you actually my story here before we actually get into the exercise, and share with you exactly how this shifted my life so dramatically, actually. I was in a high level mentorship program about 5 years ago in Sedona, Arizona. And during this mentorship program, there was a psychologist that was teaching a portion of the program. And during it was the exact exercise I'm going to share with you here today. But it was basically, all right, what are you still a victim to? And what takes up lots of energy in your life? In other words, what's a bad thing that happened to you that you haven't let go of yet? And for me, what came up was my dad. My dad was my biggest oak tree, which I talk about in a different video, right? Your mind garden and oak trees. Whatever you flowed lots of attention to is likened to you watering one of your seeds or trees of your mind garden. And for me, throughout my life, losing my dad was one of the biggest oak trees I've ever grown for myself in my life. And quite honestly, for about 20 years of my life, I never made peace with it. I never accepted his death, actually. And it wasn't until this exercise I'm going to share with you today where I actually was able to accept that part of my life and his passing. So for me, I lost my dad at a young age to pancreatic cancer. And this was my dad. And this is one of the last pictures I have of him, actually, which was the Father's Day before his passing in 1996. And I love this picture because it just shows the joy and love our family had at that point in our life. And it was my cousin Angela picking up my grandpa, and my Uncle Joe and his daughter was in that picture as well. All the gatherings we had were full of love and joy, and it was awesome. I had an amazing upbringing, quite honestly. But losing my dad was one of the most devastating times in my life. And the idea is, I replayed his death over and over and over on the screen of my imagination. It was the most dominant oak tree in my life for many, many years. And if something like that happened to you and you've been replaying it over and over again and you haven't made peace with it yet, this exercise is going to help you do that. Okay. So this is exactly how you're going to use it, is you're going to write an apology letter from the person who wronged you or you're a victim to still. And in my case, it was my dad's passing, right? My dad died. I didn't know that I needed an apology around that event that happened, that circumstance. And by the way, this applies to any circumstance that you've been through. So it doesn't matter what's happened to you, you could start to let go of it. Okay. So here's exactly how it worked for me. And then you could just take this experience and apply it to yourself, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to write out an apology letter from the person who wronged you or left you or divorced you or cheated on you, whatever that looks like, okay, to you. And when you're writing it out, I want you to imagine that this person is actually talking to you and you are writing their words, okay? So for me, this is exactly what it sounded like. Tone. My dad called me Tone. Tone, I'm so sorry I left you, buddy. I'm so sorry I left you and mom and Angie. I have a sister, Angie. I'm so sorry I caused you so much pain. I love you, buddy. I never wanted to leave. I never meant to die. I never wanted to die. Right? So I start writing this letter out with whatever's coming in. And it's just flowing, right? Well, I start writing it out and I couldn't write it actually. The very first sentence I wrote, I start welling up and I'm ready to burst into tears, right? And so the idea is the actual exercise is this. You write out a forgiveness letter, an apology letter from the person who hurt you to you. And you're going to imagine it's in their words, how they would talk to you. Okay. So you're going to imagine it's in their voice, even. It's how they would talk to you. It's all of that. Okay. And you write out exactly what you need to hear from that person. Exactly what you need to hear from that person. And the way this exercise actually works is you actually open your heart and accept it. And so at the very end of the exercise, after you write out everything you need to hear, okay, whatever that looks like for you, write it all out and you're going to read it back to yourself and imagine that person is reading it back to you. And you can even give this letter to another person to read back to you for you so that you can just listen into their words and imagine it's actually that person apologizing to you. Okay. So lots of ways to do this. But the idea is I couldn't even do this. I had so much emotional energy locked up around my dad. My oak tree was very powerful. It had infinite energy stored up within me. But the reality is we store emotional energy in our chakras, in our energy centers. And unless we let go of that energy, it stays there indefinitely. And it becomes a part of you and part of your identity, actually. So it's super important to start to open up to these ideas I'm teaching you. And by the way, these are next level ideas. This will set you free forever. So to share with you the end of what happened for me is I couldn't write out my letter, actually. In fact, I had to wait until Joanne was the woman who was teaching this part of the program. I had to wait for her to come back to my seat because I was actually sitting next to her at my table. I didn't even know she was going to be teaching this part of the course. But she came back to me and she could see I was visibly moved by this exercise. And she came up to me and was like, "Hey, what's going on, Tony?" And I told her exactly what was going on. I ended up breaking down, crying like a baby for about 5 minutes. And she's hugging me, right? I've just kind of recently met this woman and we're hugging and I'm breaking down, crying in her arms because it's so much emotional energy built up from this. And I was able to allow it to let go, actually. And as soon as I read like the first line of my letter, I understood my dad never wanted to die. If it was up to him, he'd still be here probably, right? He didn't want to leave us. It wasn't his choice. I looked at my dad from that perspective, like, oh my God, he left. Like my dad's gone now. But I had to shift the way I was looking at that circumstance in order to start to let go of it and move on, right? This particular thing provided me with the closure that I needed in order to accept and make peace with that circumstance in my life. So I hope this makes sense. This is incredibly profound and it will change your life forever. It changed my life. It was the most impactful moment of my life. And it allowed me to move past the dark night of my soul, quite honestly, and let go of that. And so for you, what are you still a victim to in your life? What circumstance happened? Who wronged you? What have you made peace with yet in your life? Who do you still hate and why? What do they do to you? This is what we need an apology from. And you don't forgive for that person, although you can, but you forgive for yourself to free up your own energy, to allow your being to move forward in life, right? That's what forgiveness will do for you. So religion tries to teach us in lots of different ways. Lots of gurus try to lead you to this idea, but this is why. When you forgive and you let go of that negative energy that you've been holding on to your whole life, in some cases, it's going to change your life like never before. So try this exercise out this week for yourself. You don't want to be around people. If you've got kids, you don't want them to be around. Do this by yourself in a quiet area, even in the car if you need to, wherever you need to go. Wherever you are, you're there, and you're going to bring your energy along with you. So it doesn't matter where you go to do this. You can let go of this energy anywhere you are. Make sure you set aside at least 20 minutes to go through this exercise and write out the apology, read it back to yourself, accept the words from what you've written out, okay? A really cool concept I want to teach you is that we are connected with every individual on planet Earth, quite honestly, and beyond, via what's called emotional cords. So anyone that you've met, especially your family and friends, right? People who you're very close to, we've got lots of emotional cords. Picture like a rope, an energetic rope that ties you to that person, and many ropes that tie you to the closest people in your life, right? So you might have many emotional cords with like your loved ones, right? Well, only one emotion can charge a cord at any given time. We have emotional cords that tie us to that person by a moment-to-moment basis, actually. So you can have thousands, if not millions of cords with people, and it could be moment to moment. So if someone yelled at you, let's say, in one moment in time, you might have anger that charges that particular chord, right? Or if that same person made you laugh a different moment, you'd have a different emotional chord that charges you up with that person. A happiness energy, right? That charges that particular chord. Well, only one emotion can charge any given chord. Well, my dad's death was like a 220-volt line that was supercharged with the emotion of devastation. That's the best word I could describe what happened, that moment in time that happened to me. It was devastating. It devastated my life for many years, actually. And it took me 20 years to get over it, actually, to actually let go of it and move on. Right now, I think back about my dad. I only have loving memories of him because I successfully removed that oak tree that was a 220-volt line that was charging me up with him. I hope this makes sense. But if you have a 220 line that's charging you up with anybody in your life, you need to do this with that person. You have got to let go and forgive, make peace with, and accept what had happened. Okay. I'm going to be giving you other ideas about this in next week. But this is the most powerful one. I want to give it to you right away. Okay. So try this out for yourself. Write out this letter for yourself and let me know what you think. Email me. I really would love to hear from you how this exercise impacts you. Okay. And if you break down crying, don't worry. That's actually how you know you did it right. Okay. So I want to send you lots of love and light for this section of the course. And I'm looking very forward to hearing how this goes for you. Okay. So I'll see you in the next video.